An interesting question that always comes up whenever I'm talking to managers and talking to agents, and I know there's a difference between them, but it's you meet a creator for the first time. Like, what do you look for? What stands out for you? What are the red flags? Like, how does Christina Brennan view someone that's someone being a creator when you meet them for the first time?
It's a great question, and you don't always know up front. I mean, there are definitely things you can look for and things I look for. I look for a business savvy creator. My whole MO is not just brand deals, it's to build something beyond social media. Does this person have the desire to do that? Because not everyone does, and that's fine. I think there's this crazy amount of pressure on so many people to hit all of these benchmarks as a creator to build something incredible. And not everybody wants to do that. Like, what's wrong with making 10,000 a year for a creator? There's nothing wrong with that. However, I'm looking for the clients who want to build big businesses, who have big aspirations, but also have a sense of business acumen, right? So do they want to treat this as a business? Are they going to be quick in reporting and analytics? Are they going to have ideas and things they want to achieve? All of those things are really enticing. And then the other part of it, it's the data, right? Does their audience match who they are? That's a really big one. So if your audience does not match who you are, you're going to have a very tough time selling to that audience, right? So there's brand deals, and then there's conversions, and there's building a brand. You need all of those things if you really, really, really want to be successful, or at least the building the business side, right? So I'm looking for someone with a business acumen, with an audience that reflects who they are, and ideally some sort of conversion data, right? Some sort of something that tells me their audience is engaged and on fire, or at least the propensity to have an engaged audience that will hand over their credit card or something like that. So I usually look for people who are over 200,000 followers and probably around a million, though I have clients with 40 million followers, 17 million followers plus. But I usually start recruiting around the 200,000 to 1 million mark. And I like to look manually at their comments as well, beyond just the data and analytics.
Said a lot of really cool stuff there. Why that band? Like you said, 200,000 and above. What does that 200,000 mean to you? I think we're recording February 13th, 2023.
Yeah, I mean, it means that you could, in the eyes of a lot of brands, that's a really nice sweet spot to work with. So just from a business sense, that's a good place to be at. And as a manager, you make a certain percentage of deals. Typically, and I say typically for a reason, the bigger you are, the bigger the brand deal is, and it has to be worth my team's time in a way, right? So I have staff. There's a number of people who work on the Digital Renegades team. So I have to make sure my staff is employed. So I need at least a chunk of money that really makes sense for the work expenditure that's happening. So that's one thing, right? The next thing is it shows me you can definitely build an audience. Now, that does not mean someone with 10,000 followers 20,000 followers can't have a thriving business. 5,000, 1,000 followers. That does not mean that. But from my standpoint with a full staff and the percentage I take, right, there needs to be a big enough chunk of money on the table to be able to say, I can take this on. I can take this person on as a client. It's not going to put me in the negative. This is something that's going to grow and get bigger.
You saying that it is perfectly fine to be a creator who doesn't have that business acumen, that doesn't want to achieve like the biggest and the best stuff, I think it's so simple. But to your point, I think it's so profound for some people to hear. Like, you don't have to feel shameful for not wanting to have like the biggest and baddest dreams. Why do you think there is such a pressure on creators to go beyond social media with their business?
To build it up, because I think it's the pressure of social media, right? Now there are all these gurus out there saying, if you're not charging $10,000 a post, you aren't respecting what you're worth, or you're not really in this. It's like this kind of fog of social media and all of these super successful people out there saying, you have to do this, you have to do that. And I think it puts a lot of pressure on people, and that's just not the reality. You can do whatever you want with your social media page. You can grow it as big as you want. You can make millions of dollars off of your social. All those things are possible, but not everybody wants to. Not everybody wants to. You could be fine with, accepting $10,000 worth of deals in a year, and oh my gosh, you can put that into your kids' college fund. I mean, there's so many different ways to use social media, monetize social media, or not monetize social media, and you get to choose how you want to do that.
You said it's important to have a creator match their audience. I think that's a really interesting statement, and I do want to get to it, but I want to go a little background on yourself, because when I was reaching out and just thinking, who do I get on this season as managers and agents, because I want to talk all things representation, so the creators just have like a very good understanding of what they're getting into, what they can get into, and maybe where they're falling short.
Yeah.
The really cool thing about yourself is that you come from a traditional talent world, be it that you were working with athletes, and now you are all in, surrounded at the top of your game with creators. Tell me a little bit about that transition, because I think I've heard a couple things from managers saying we need more entertainment or traditional entertainment managers in the creator space for a couple of reasons. So tell me a bit of background. How did you go about that transition, and why athletes first and then creators second?
Yeah. So it kind of came to me. It wasn't something I went after. So I knew I wanted to be in sports. I absolutely loved athletics. I was a synchronized swimmer. Loved it, right? And long story short, I ended up transferring and going to Syracuse University for sports management. And it was great. And I had all of these incredible internships. So my first internship was with Premier Management Group, or PMG Sports. And I was in a PR field, which was not a fit for me, right? I thought that's what I would like, but not a great fit for me. But I was working with all these incredible athletes. The agency represented Nastia Lukin, Apollo Ono, all when I was there or at one time or another. So they represented over 500 Olympic athletes. That was their thing. And it was great. It was awesome. And then from there, I worked with a UFC fighter and kind of fell in love with boxing and MMA. And that was like, okay, this is really cool. And again, that was something that I did because I needed an internship, because I was from a small town. I knew I had to figure out what I was going to do with the resources I had, limited resources. I'm not from New York City. I'm from a small town in upstate New York. So, I worked with him, and I started working with him on his social media, and it was his comeback to the UFC. So it was really, really cool. And then I was lucky enough to score an internship at this incredible sports agency, and that's when I fell in love with sales and had some really great mentors there and figured out that's what I loved. Shortly after that, when I graduated, I went to the New York Yankees, and I was on their sales floor. And that's when I learned really, really, really how to sell. I mean, I was doing so many reps, and my bosses were absolutely incredible. They were animals on the phone. They were great. And I found out I was pretty good at it. So I moved up through the ranks pretty quickly. And then one day I was at for my category and then the next category up. And then one day I was on LinkedIn, and I was just, prospecting for, season ticket holders, things like that. And I just got this weird message in my inbox that read, "It looks like you've done something with your life. I think we need to talk." And I was like, okay. And it ended up being the president and the CEO of the sports agency that I interned with. So this was like, I would say a couple years later, right? It's probably 3-4 years later, something like that. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'm all ears. I will always take any phone call that sounds interesting, right? I would never shut myself off or not entertain any opportunity. And I got on the phone with him, and he had said, we have this really big creator. I've taken the company digital. I've kind of let go of traditional athletes. I was like, okay, that's interesting, but do you still have the athletes? And he was like, yeah, I still have a few, but this girl's in fitness, and I think we could do some really cool things together. I think you should come and work for me again. And I was like, did not expect this to happen. And at the time, I was still very athlete-centric. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go work with the athletes there, and that's going to be great. And then I signed on to the company as the vice president at 22. And then I was like, all right, I'm just going to focus on the athletes. That's what I'm going to do. And then I saw a contract come through and a deal memo come through that he just closed for this digital creator. And I said, holy shit, I need to go digital, because I had no idea the potential money you could make in digital. Everyone says, things are going digital. Things are going digital. You got to go digital. Tech, 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 tech. And that was my kind of really eye-opening moment where this creator had just landed a 6-figure deal for what I saw to be, because I didn't know any better, minimal work. And I was like, wait a second, we could pump this out all day long. Fast forward, that's not exactly and entirely how it works. It was just my bright eyes going, oh, this is amazing. But I was like, I'm going to follow the money. It's time to follow the money. How can we do this? So I did. And that creator, she has 40 million followers. We've built her a global brand. And I've worked on really, really big deals and expanded the roster and agency to not only Instagram, but TikTok. I have tons of creators on there. My creators on YouTube are growing. And then some. So it was really in that moment where I was like, wow, that's a lot of money for a post. Did I see there's a whole world of opportunity that no one knows about yet. So yeah, I mean, I've been in the industry representing influencers now for 5 years, which is longer than most people even knew what an influencer was. So it's been a really, really cool experience kind of building these things out. And I've seen kind of how influencers grow on platforms, right? So when TikTok came out, I have creators who make 30,000+ a post, even though I don't price like that, but averaging around that, who at the very start of TikTok were only making $100 a post. And it's just that platform maturity. So it's also being there for the ride and just seeing how incredible digital can be, especially with COVID as a catalyst. And COVID was horrible, but social media gave people a means of connecting where otherwise they wouldn't. And that's a really cool thing to be a part of too.
There's so much I want to go into here. When you're with athletes and you're working with athletes and representing them, what is something that an athlete has in terms of their relationship with you or their drive or just any of their characteristics that creators can learn from?
That's really interesting. That's really interesting. Well, to start, a lot of athletes are media trained, especially when they get up into the bigger leagues. So that's always a great thing. Like we have Dara Torres, who's one of the most medaled female Olympians of all times, won 12 Olympic medals. She is so good on camera when cameras are rolling. It is incredible. It is absolutely incredible. As well as there's this thing with athletes where it's like short term. They don't fester on things. So if something goes wrong or something goes bad, they just move on and it's on to the next thing and they've forgotten about it and they've moved on. Where that's a very athletic mindset, right? Because you can't be focusing on your prior play on the current play, right? So those things are really, I think, would be helpful for creators as far as, really working on media training, though I'm really blessed and I have such hardworking creators. I have a lot that are great on camera too. But as far as, athletes get a lot of media training, they get a lot of camera time, a lot of that interviewing. So they're typically quite good at that, as well as that athletic mindset of just, moving on.
Okay, earlier I asked you, what do you look for in a creator? And you gave me some answers that I'm still festering over now in my mind. I'm not like an athlete. I don't let go of that thought. Still thinking about those things today. But what's interesting, and I can kind of see something similar in you just from like the 10, 15 minutes we were talking, is this like level of competition. Right? Athletes have to go through so many elements or points of friction to get to that superstardom where brands want to work with them. Creators, there's definitely an element of friction, but it's interesting to see your perspective on it because it almost feels like creators could use some of that like athlete mentality to get over the continuous hurdles that keep coming at them every day for a very long career. Am I right in saying that, or are there holes in that argument?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, here's the thing with athletes, they go out there, they do their sport, and that is their job. When you're on social media, you are hyper stimulated with all of these notifications, all this everything all the time. So, I mean, creators have a competition like within themselves almost with the way they handle their social media. So there's definitely lots of points of frictions with creators, and a lot of it too, as with anything, it's mindset. It's that competitive mindset. It's about being focused on one thing, moving to the next, being organized, things like that. So, I mean, creators definitely, especially now where everybody can be a creator, which is a good thing, right? Everyone has a shot at an opportunity, have a lot of competition now to grow. Back in the day, not everyone felt comfortable posting. Now, pretty much anyone can be a creator. So there's a very big pool of competition that you're constantly going against as a creator, constantly trying to quote unquote fight the algorithm, constantly trying to grow a following that maybe is stalled or hasn't grown in a while, or re-engage because the algorithm's kind of pushing your content down. There's a lot of things that creators cannot control in that kind of competitive sphere that they're going up against.
And so is there an element of coaching, like performance coaching, that you offer creators that you work with to get into that athletic mentality of, to your point, there are so many things you can't control, but there are things that you can, so that if you can focus on those, like the career, the longevity, the happiness, the fulfillment is there?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with life. I mean, at the Yankees, one of my managers used to say, "Control the controllables," right? That's all you can do. And a lot of time, I have very good relationships with my creators. So a lot of times they're asking me what they think because I've seen creators grow. I've been at this for quite a little bit of time. I've seen all of these divots and ruts that creators can get into. And just being someone who, one, cares about them is comforting to them, and two, knows that these little divots and points and downturns are only temporary, I think goes a long way. It's like I've seen these things before, and just being a confidant and a friend to someone who's struggling with their business or with growing their business, I think goes a long way. And I have a very, very good relationship with all of my creators.
Would you consider yourself a manager or an agent?
So it's manager. I would consider myself a manager. It's only recently has there been a lot of talk about the division between manager and agent. It's been kind of a fluid definition in a social construct of what a manager and agent actually are. And there's obviously the legal definition, which is what I think is really getting the spotlight and shine on it. And depending on what state you're in too, there are a lot of legal aspects on, what managers can take, what agents can take, what agents can do, what that looks like. So because I'm in certain states, I rely upon the company to kind of tell me what I can and cannot do, but every single state is different. So, and I'm not an expert on what every single state does. So it's very complicated. It's very complex. I would say manager. I'd say manager.
Why do you think there is such fluidity between manager and agent in the creator space, where in more traditional entertainment spaces, so whether it's an athlete or like I come from music, and coming from music, like I knew what an agent did and I knew what a manager did. And you step into the creator world, and some people are agents, some people say they're managers, but they're doing the same things and they're not doing the same things. To your point of fluidity, why do you think there is such fluidity right now in the space?
Yeah, because there's no barriers to entry and boyfriends got involved. Like if you
But
want
isn't that
quick
the music
answer,
industry as well? Like no barriers to entry and like boyfriends can't.
it's every industry. It's every industry, but the fact is that when you're in sports, if you're a sports agent doing on-field contracts and things like that, there are certifications you have to have. There are so many rules and regulations. It's highly regulated. It's highly concentrated, right? Whereas in entertainment, everyone thinks they can be a manager and everyone thinks they can do it because if you can talk the talk, you can, right? There's this air about creators where you don't necessarily want a manager or agent, or it's a little bit hush-hush because it makes them seem maybe inauthentic, which is just not true. Especially when you explain the reason I have a manager and the reason I have an agent is because I get to focus on creating content for you while they handle the business side. But with sports and all those things, it's cool to have an agent. It's cool to have a manager. It's cool to have all these things. It's not weird. It's weird not to have one, right? You want these things. You strive to have these things, whereas creators kind of shy away from it a lot of times because sometimes, it's boyfriend syndrome, right? Boyfriend wants to get involved with their business. Or sometimes they just feel as though they can do it better, which again, it's your decision on how you want to run your business. So I think a lot of it is that there's a lot of people claiming to be agents, managers that aren't, claiming to have experience that don't have it, and it's just kind of like the Wild
Yeah.
West in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
Okay, you said something interesting. You said a lot of creators see having a manager as an agent as something that's inauthentic. I've heard the opposite side. So why? Yeah,
Really?
yeah. I've heard it as like, oh, this is vanity. Like I've made it like I have a manager. Like there is someone on my team. There is someone that sees me as something that's credible. From your experience, this is so interesting. Where do you think that perception of inauthenticity comes from?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is like if I have other people in my business, it's very personal to some creators depending on the type of content they make. It's very personal. If I now have another person, is my content going to be as personal? What does an agent or manager actually do? Are they going to tell me what to put in my content? Are they going to give me these guidelines? So some of it is just an education standpoint or finding the right manager or agent that's right for you too. So I think it's adding someone to your business is scary no matter what industry you're in, especially if you're documenting your life. So I think that's part of it. And yeah, I mean, I think there's also an element of it where they just want to be involved just at every single level, which is fine and totally cool and doable. And my clients get updates. They know where everything is all the time. They can call me, text me, whatever. But I think there's a little bit of hesitancy with managers and agents just because of all those reasons. Plus, they may have had a bad experience with one in the past too, where it's like they don't trust a human being in that position in their business. So there's
Well,
that
you've been
too.
really successful at it for 5 years. So give me a little Christina Brennan philosophy. Like, how do you go about interactions with your clients so that they respect you, that they might not feel like you're overstepping? What's your approach when you start working with that creator?
They know exactly what the process and system is going to be as soon as they're on the phone with me. I don't hide anything. I am completely transparent. You're going to get lead updates every single Friday. If you have any questions on any of these lead updates, ask me, call me. I'm very responsive. I'm very quick. They can call me if they need something. I am very active on their social media posts. They always know that I'm in their corner. And if they ever have any questions about it, it's a simple conversation and it's a phone call and it's talking about why they may have hesitancies or why they might be scared to have an agent if they just signed on with me and what that looks like. And then on top of that, I make it very clear that if any point that you don't necessarily want to work with me, it's not going to be something where I try to hold talent or it's going to be filled with animosity. I want to work with people who want to work with me. And that is the fundamental piece of the business, as well as I do very well. So creators feel pretty confident once they're getting their first checks and brand deals that they're quite happy with. So there's that too. There's the actual proof in the pudding.
I've heard some agents and managers say this and some not put this into practice, but where do you stand on having like a dating era in the relationship between you and the creator with the idea of, well, let's not sign officially right now, but let's see how each other works before we actually can get to a role so that you can assess who they are? How do you see that step? Is it necessary? Is it not?
You can't sort of be pregnant. You're either signed on with me or you're not. So, but if you want to leave, you can leave. So I always do the way, and I don't want to get into it too much because there's obviously legal things involved. But if a creator's ever unhappy, they can always get out of their talent contracts. It's as simple as that. So while there is a contract in place and I work on an exclusive basis because you get all the services that come with the agency I'm at, from an activations person to various other people who will be working with you on your team, helping you schedule, helping you do all these things. I can't see kind of dating someone, for lack of better words. It's either you want to work with me or you don't. And if along the way you decide you don't want to work with me, we'll figure it out. It's not something where there's going to be, again, animosity surrounding that.
Interesting. So how do you assess the human so quickly? Because I feel like you can see the business, you can see the data, you can assess the audience, but I find like assessing the human in a very short period of time, you've obviously done it really successfully. So what's your approach to that? And like, what should maybe
Talking.
and talking. So, what should creators look out for? Yeah. Hey,
Talking.
what should
Yeah.
creators look out for when like
Yeah,
agents,
I
managers
mean,
approach them and want to work with them?
yeah, when you're on the phone, I mean, if they get on the phone, how about that to start out with? Are they going to get on the phone and talk to you? Are they going to talk to you a second time? Are they going to talk to you a third time, right? So a lot of it is phone conversation, right? In a lot of ways, not to go back to that phrase, a lot of it's like dating. You got to get to know somebody a little bit, right? And it may not be one phone call, it may not be two. With creators to try to feel if it's a right fit, there's a number of things you can do, right? So one, talking, we established that. But two, potentially looking at their roster, looking through, are there brand deals that make sense, right? So my roster's public, right? So, or I'll say, a creator that I have who's somewhat similar is X, Y, and Z. You go take a look at their feed and they're seeing brand deals and they can see my work right there. It's point blank right there. Or they can read up my background, or they can look at this, or they can look at my social media and decide if my personality is a fit. I'm not arrogant enough to say that I am the perfect fit for everybody, even though I would put my track record as far as business wise and sales wise up against anyone else. But there's a personality aspect that comes with it. Is it a good personality fit? Do I deliver messages in the way they want their brand delivered? Right? So a lot of it's talking, a lot of it's just kind of doing your homework that way. I've also had creators, that I rep get on the phone with potential people, right? So I have a very good relationship with all of my creators. So I'd have someone on my roster talk to this person, and they can ask this person whatever they want to ask too. So they can also hear it from one of my creators if they so choose to, which is, I think, an underrated method of vetting as
Cool.
well.
Should creators expect to work with a couple different managers and agents before they find the right fit? Is that typical?
Everybody's path is different. It's a good question. I want to say no, only because a lot of my talent I've repped for years. Like, I have a very, very high retention rate, and I've only had a few creators who have had managers before me and the agency I'm at. So I actually don't know the answer to that, but it could also be something where you grow and you kind of shift. So the answer is I don't know.
It's all good.
I'm
Yeah,
not
no,
sure.
it's all good. You don't have to have all the answers. Nothing about being vulnerable in 2023. But tell me this. I want to go back to this, like your background working in traditional entertainment with athletes and coming over, being successful, working with creators. I heard you say on another podcast that brands want to invest in spokespeople. And one of the things I was pretty impressed with when I was doing research on you is that it sounds like you have a really good understanding of how to build a creator and their brand to be seen as that spokesperson, to almost be seen as like true celebrity. So what does that mean, brands want to invest in spokespeople?
Yeah, so I think if I can remember correctly, on that podcast I can't exactly remember what the question was, but we were talking about, creators and what brands look for. And so many creators now, they're shy about putting their face in content, and that really does them a disservice, because then your page becomes a media company and you're competing with other media companies who have $500,000 budgets and email lists and things like that and various touch points. So you always want to have your face in it. So I think that's where I was going with that one podcast that I was on, is you want your face present. You want your personality present. When you're selling a product can have a personality, but it's the personality you give it, right? So a lot of brands want to align with personalities that extend that for whatever product that they're trying to sell, right? So as far as making an influencer a celebrity or crossover, it's a team effort, right? I don't want to say I can do it and I can wave a wand and all of a sudden they're on the front cover of GQ. But it's a growth process, and it's also a strategic partnership process where you want to align with brands that have very similar core values to go off of. And brands want to do the same thing. They want to find someone who has similar values to extend their brand messaging and make sure it's a good fit. So it's about finding those partnerships that are going to allow you to do that, as well as structuring those partnerships, preferably in a long-term way, but also in a way that could potentially be beyond social media, in a sense that this brand is potentially using you in PR hits, right? So now you're extending your brand reach. It's not just social, it's this. Maybe they're using you in email blasts or things like that. Okay, now you're being exposed to a whole new audience. And now it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Maybe you're doing events. Maybe you're doing things like this. All of these different touch points and kind of areas of marketing, you're now being exposed to in a strategic partnership while being exposed to a new audience. So it's about structuring partnerships and relationships, and you can't do that with all deals. You got to be selective, and not all companies have those resources. But finding those opportunities and really selling in a unique concept, a unique story that's still true to you, but also beneficial to the brand. Brands don't work with you because you love them. Brands work with you because there's value to be gained. So what is that value? How do we hone in on that value? And how do we expand that value?
No, go deeper on that. Love that. Brands don't work with you because you love them. Brands work with you because of the value you bring. As a creator and as someone representing creators, what value do you usually put forth, or do you find is the most effective when putting your creators forth before brands?
Yeah, so all of my creators have incredible stories and they share their stories with their audience. So there's a connection, right? So I have this one creator, Danielle Brown, Healthy Girl Kitchen, who is just, she's not only an incredible creator, but she's an incredible friend. I love her to death, as I do with all of my creators. She's built this massive community of almost 7,000 or 7 million people, 7 million people. And they trust her, and they trust her with everything. They trust her with everything she has to say. And the relationship they have is insane. She released her pregnancy date and had a number of her followers confirm that they had the same pregnancy date, and they were all connecting and really kind of building this deep relationship. And she's very interactive on her posts. So as a brand that sees that connection and that human interaction and that storytelling and that brand, you're going to want to be a part of that. You're going to want to be a part of those conversations. You're going to want to position your product in a way that it's being portrayed by someone that people trust. So I'm not quite sure if I answered your question the right way or the way you were looking at it, but it's one of those things where it's relationship at its core, storytelling at its core, and really, as cliche as it is, it's community at its core.
It goes back to that quote, which I took from that interview, where you said brands want to invest in spokespeople. And what I really think about a lot, and I think it's coming through in this conversation, is that following is one thing, but being someone that people trust and being someone that people want to place trust in is a whole different game. And it sounds like that's your superpower, is helping creators get to that spokesperson level.
Yeah, it's working with what they built and putting it in the place where it expands, right? So a lot of people ask, what do managers and agents do? Well, the core to any manager and agent is to help make you money and build your brand. Like, don't let anyone tell you otherwise, but it's how do we do so in a way that's going to feed all avenues of your business and not do something that's going to put you in a precarious situation. How do we build this further? How do we structure partnerships differently? What can we do to push the envelope and really go beyond what anyone else has done? So yeah, I would definitely say that it's, the strategic partnership side, it's pushing the envelope. It's, negotiating deals that really, really put you in a different light and different position in the marketplace.
This might be a little naive because I haven't managed or represented creators, but what happens when you're working with the talent and you both have the same vision, you're going at it, you're building for them, but maybe it ends up happening that you as the manager or the agent have much larger ambitions that you can see for them than they have for themselves. How do you navigate that relationship so that you still help them get to that value, but I guess it doesn't become your dream and still stays their dream?
Yeah, that's a great question. At the end of the day, this is their business. I work for them. right? So it's not necessarily about what I want, it's how can I deliver based off of what they want. And I meet them where they're at and I'll go where they go. My job as a manager is to present them with opportunity. They get to decide if they want to take it. It doesn't mean I won't give my opinion, but I am not the decision maker for what they do with their brand. I'm the opportunity maker and I bring them the opportunity and I bring them all of these different things and they get to decide if they want to take it or not.
Okay. I like that a lot. How often do you check in with your talent to see where they do want to go?
Oh, all the time. All the time. I mean, that's something that's a regular and fluid conversation. I just called a client the other day where I thought of this opportunity for her, and I was like, hey, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? And they loved it, and now we're going to go after that opportunity, or they'll call me and have some idea, right, and we'll go after that opportunity. So this is fluid and open, and we definitely work for a set of goals, and sometimes things take longer than we'd like them to, but it's a constant conversation. That's something that we're updated constantly on.
And I think you said this a little bit earlier, but you were talking about how like one of the core tenets to being an agent or a manager is to get the best deal for your client. And thinking of getting the best deal for your talent towards, let's say, being the spokesperson, what does that mean? What goes into the best deal? Because I'm guessing it's more than just money.
Yeah, definitely. Does it put me in a position? Does this deal put me in a position where I can now grow my brand? Not me as a agent. I'm pretending I'm the creator. So let me take a step back. So as an influencer, does this put me in an opportunity where I can now grow my brand more? Does this put me in an opportunity where I'm now potentially crossing over platforms, where I'm doing events where I get to use this opportunity to meet my audience, right? To interact with my audience, to do these different things. Does this put me in an opportunity to help build that relationship? Is this going to put me in a positive light? There's so many things as a manager and agent that I analyze on whether or not it's going to be a good deal. Again, I have to repeat it. I don't make the decision. I present the opportunity. I give my opinions on the opportunity and then they can take it. Or, as a creator, is it one of those things where they maybe experienced, due to a death in the family or something like that, financial hardship, where they need every deal they can possibly get? So really, it's about what are we dealing with at whatever point in your life you're at, or whatever point in your business you're at. What do you want to do about it, and how do you want to go about it? And that's specific to every single client. Some clients, they use their social media to funnel to their business, and they have multi-million-dollar businesses in digital marketing or various product sales or anything like that. And if it's even a $20,000 post deal, which again, I don't do rate cards or anything like that, it's just not worth their time, right? Whereas for another creator, it would be. And it's because they're running a multi-million-dollar business and they're doing deals, and that time expenditure just does not make sense. So it's different for every single creator, and a good opportunity for one creator may not be a great opportunity for another.
How often does it happen where you present what you feel to be a really good deal for the creator and the creator doesn't see it in a similar light? Does that indicate, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, does that indicate a great partnership between a manager and a creator, is when the deal you bring to them is one that they are smiling about and accepting most of the time?
Yeah, I mean, that really happens where I'm like, I think this is a really good opportunity, and they don't take it. I mean, maybe once or twice that's happened in my entire career. I know my creators really, really well, and I'll advocate for them in their voice the way they want to be advocated for. So that rarely, if ever, happens.
So would you say that that's
Yeah, so
something to look out for?
something
Like as a creator, if you keep noticing that your manager or agent is bringing you stuff that doesn't align with where you want to go, is that a bad indicator?
No, because they have to bring you every single deal that they get. Every single firm offer you should be seeing. Again, it's the manager's job to bring you opportunity. You get to decide if you want to take it. Now, if they're pushing you into a deal, so even when I find bad deals, I'm presenting it to my talent. It's not my decision whether or not they take that deal. It's theirs. So I give them my opinion. I don't think this is a good reason for X, Y, and Z, but I am not the ultimate decision maker, and I don't get really emotionally attached to deals either. But if you're a creator and all the deals, your manager is pushing you into something and you feel as though it's not a good fit, that's an indication that it's probably not a great fit. But if they're pushing you into it, if they're bringing you deals and firm offers, that's a good indication that they're doing work. But if they're bringing you what you would see as a really bad deal over and over again, and they're saying it's a great deal, you should take it, you need to take it, it's probably not a great fit.
You brought up very briefly the idea of like protection, and you're like, it's not my job to decide for them. I'm going to bring them everything. I'll give them my opinion, but at the end of the day, it is their decision. Should managers or agents protect creators in ways from certain information that comes in, or should they allow all information to come through, yet be that guide or be that voice?
They have to let all information come through. You have a fiduciary responsibility to your client to tell them what is going on in their business. And they get to decide, right? There's methods and means of delivery. If a brand said something horrible about your creator, that they're this, and this, you don't want to just annihilate the person on the phone, right? But you do need to bring up what the market is saying, because hiding things from creators, one, is not ethical, and two, it's one of those things where if this is what the market's saying, as hard as it is to hear, you got to hear it, right? And maybe it's course correcting. And if someone's telling you what's wrong and the reason they're not investing in you, that's the best position you could possibly be in. It's when people ignore you and you're not getting anything and you don't know what's going on. Are you absolutely helpless? Sometimes that tough information or that tough feedback from a brand is exactly what you need to accelerate your business.
The one thing that I respect a lot about what you do is you create TikToks yourself. Like you're jumping into this creator persona as well. And not only are you doing it just as like in a lifestyle capacity, but you're also doing it to help other creators better understand this agent manager creator career relationship. Talk to me more about that, because I don't think there's that many managers and agents building such empathy by just being a creator themselves and actually showcasing what they believe and getting into the creator's world. I feel like that must pay off so many dividends for you.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where people can kind of see my personality before they even get on the phone with me. It's one of those things where, as a manager and agent, you have some sort of, this is going to sound weird to say, liability when you're creating stuff, because usually managers are in the background. So if a manager does something where an influencer just doesn't agree or something like that, you now have a public platform where people can go out and hate you, right? Whereas a lot of managers are not public facing, and if something goes wrong with their talent, no one knows who they are, so there's absolutely no backlash or track record. So there's an element of liability. I operate business in a very ethical way. I have no fear. So there's that, where I'm posting content and I'm opening myself up to backlash and all these different things, right? So there's that aspect, which I think is nice, because if someone really hated me, they could just stitch my videos and just tear me apart, which, okay. But, yeah, I mean, I think maybe my creators like it. I think it's cool sometimes that they get to see that I'm emailing her on the computer, or I wake up early just so I could do a good job for them. I think that's kind of cool, and it humanizes me in a way, right? But it's also one of those things where it's like, it's very humbling. It's not easy to grow on social media at all. And they really have a skill and a knack and have something. So it's also one of those things where you gain a level of respect when you start doing it, and you look at these people with millions of followers and you think, wow, they really, really did something incredible here. So there's also that, like, the level of respect, I think, too, that you gain from that.
Because I haven't seen that many do it, and I totally hear where you're coming from, in that if a manager is in the limelight, there is opportunity to go at that individual, and maybe it's not that individual's point. I think what you've said throughout this whole conversation, which is definitely resonated, is like, it's not about me as a manager. It's like, I'm here to help the creator get to wherever they want to get to in their career. Going back Yeah,
Well, take it from the music industry that you come from, Danny, right? Think about Scooter Braun. He's built an incredible brand image, but that also puts him in a position of liability. When his clients don't like him, you're sending wars of people to his page and to his profile, whether warranted or not. So that's a great example of, sometimes things don't necessarily go your way, but also the benefits to having a big brand like
for
that
sure.
too.
But I think the element of empathy in my eyes, again, assuming that you're acting with good character on social media, probably leads to such a great indicator of who you are as a human, as a manager, as an agent, which I know you were telling me that it's acted as such a great lead generator. And I can imagine that's the reason why.
Yeah, it's a great lead generator, and it's also great in a way because people can see my personality and figure out if it's a fit for them. As much as I'd like to believe everyone's going to like me, that may not be the case, and I may not be the best fit for someone, or I could be a great fit and they get to see my personality. They can see that I'm very into health and wellness. I represent a lot of health and wellness creators. They can see that I share those values too. So there's that as well. They can kind of see that I align with a lot of their
Yeah.
core beliefs too.
Okay. I want to go back to these two worlds, the traditional talent industry and the creator space. In your eyes, what is the real difference between a creator and a celebrity?
That's a great question because the lines have become blurred, right? A creator is someone with a brand that lives on social media, in my opinion, right? A celebrity is a person whose brand exists off social media, right? So, is it someone who's going to be pretty instantly recognizable off camera? That's really, I think, where the crossover happens. But the truth is, if you're a brand and you're looking at clients, if you have a celebrity that has no brand on social media, it's probably not the best fit. A lot of brands have leaned digital for the reasons we talked about, because digital creators or digital celebrities have a relationship with their audience, and it's a direct relationship filled with trust.
So then, does the word celebrity mean anything today when you're dealing with brands and they ask for, oh, we're looking for a celebrity versus we're asking to work with a creator? Do they mean the same thing, or what do they mean when they say we want to work with a celebrity?
Usually, if someone's talking about a celebrity, it's an A-list celebrity. So that delineation definitely still exists. So when a brand comes to me on the corporate side and they're like, we want to book a celebrity, that's usually someone who's an A-list celebrity. Now, I always, depending on the program, vet their social media before I say, this is a celebrity that you're going to want to work with. I still do that. But there's definitely still a clear delineation between celebrity and influencer. But I mean, I have certain clients like people like Jen Selter who have really pushed that envelope and people know beyond social media. And kind of in that celebrity role too. And then I have people like Captain Sandy Yawn from Bravo's Below Deck, who has a great social media following, and she is a celebrity. She lives on people's TVs. People know her. People come up to her. People beyond social media know who she is.
So then what does it take for a creator to become a celebrity? Because I think what you were saying earlier makes a lot of sense. Like the traditional celebrity was someone off digital, and it was a movie star. It's an athlete, and then yes, maybe they have a presence on. You also alluded to the fact that there's blurred lines, which I think is so true. So if a creator comes to you and says, hey, I want to get to that A-list level, what in your eyes, what does it take? What should they be thinking about? What should they be doing?
Yeah, it's an investment in yourself, right? It's an investment in your business. That's a long road. That's not overnight success, nor is really anything, but that's a long road, right? It's again those strategic partnerships, perhaps taking deals that may not necessarily be the biggest financial gain, but will put you in a different position and will be a strategic opportunity, like PR, like events, like things like that. Going back to the way you strategically structure deals. And then also on top of that, one of the biggest and best ways to do that is come out with a product line, right? Your own product line, your own brand that you're selling, that you are now getting into retailers and people are looking at the product and seeing it's a great product and then driving back to you. So there's that too. I mean, the perfect example of this, and I do not rep him, would be the Paul brothers, right? Social media celebrities now, full on celebrities and athletes. I mean, it's nuts, right? But that was a long road. That was no overnight success. They came out with product lines. They've done so well and built these mega audiences, and people know them off social media. So it's a long road. It's a road of strategy. It's a road of course correcting, pushing the envelopes, and as a creator, getting off social in a sense that you're in the community and you're active in the community and you're building out that way too.
So let's say I'm a creator and I want, like, that is my goal. I want to get to that A-list level. Should I be looking for representation in that entertainment world? Or is it okay to work with a manager and agent who's just always been in that creator space?
It's a great question, right? I mean, you'd ideally want someone who's done that before, right? Or has some sort of mentor or some sort of real hunger to build that, right? So, I mean, it's always great to have someone with a track record who's done it before, right? The one thing to be careful with is that traditional entertainment people, celebrity agents, music agents, athlete agents don't typically know how social media
Is that
works.
still true to today?
So that's one thing to consider. That is still
That's
so true. That is
that's
still
so
so true. It's,
crazy to me,
it's
Christina. That's
ridiculously
so
true.
crazy to me.
It's so true.
Why? Why? Why
Yeah.
is that? Why is that the
So
case?
they choose not to. There's an arrogance. There's an arrogance in this space. Does it really matter? I mean, again, if you take, like, let's say an athlete, right? Their main goal is to be good at their sport. It's not to be great on social media too. So there's also where they want to place their
Got you.
focus too. Now, that being said, I still represent athletes. I have a wonderful NIL athlete. I'm actually working with my sister now, who's an NIL athlete, they want to be great at social media. And my one client, Michael Giroux, who is one of the top gymnasts in the nation, has over 2 million followers and is leading campaigns for Calvin Klein. I mean, so there are people who definitely do it, but it's still very, very true that people are unsure how to structure social media deals. And a lot of it is just, we talked about the wild west of social media where you're exposed to everything. Sports, music, all those things are very regimented. They're very much concentrated, which that insulation can sometimes hinder it.
Okay, well, one last question before I let you go, because you have given me a ton, and I think you've given everyone a ton to think about. So, one, thank you so much for just being so candid with this. Goes back to that initial thing. I asked you, a creator walks in, creator walks in the room, what do you look for? And you told me a bunch of different things. One thing that you said that was super interesting was that you want a creator that matches their audience. And then we were talking about going from creator to celebrity, and you talked about how a big play there is to potentially have your own product, and you're getting into more traditional environments where that celebrity is known. Tell the people, Christina, what do you mean by a creator matching their audience?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you are a fitness creator as a girl and you're trying to come out with your own fitness line, and you come out with a whole line of sports bras, leggings, things like that, all targeting women, and your audience is 90% male, that is not going to work. Because why would they buy that? Right? So there's an issue. Whereas my creators who have an audience that match convert like wildfire. Or have an audience that cares what you're saying and would purchase the same product. Maybe not believe exactly what you do or match exactly who you are, but would take your advice and do something similar or have some sort of element that's similar, right? I have someone like Jack Mancuso, who that's a great example of someone who's starting to build into that celebrity level. He just did a huge national TV commercial in December. His audience is very similar to him. They're men who love to barbecue, love to grill, love to hang out, support, law enforcement, things like that. All of these things that are little elements, and his audience believes in all of those things. So he's another one who converts like wildfire because his audience, while they may not all be named Jack Mancuso and be 27 and from upstate New York, they have an element of bonding with Jack that's very similar. Whether they like to grill, whether they support this, whether they just like to look at huge tomahawks cooking on the grill with garlic and all those different things. There's some element of connection that's true to the people watching too, which is why there's such success and it does so well.
There it is. My brain can go on for hours. You've been so kind, given time, giving expertise, answering all these questions. I think it's really cool to see what you've built. It's wild to see that you're still. I think you're 20. You said you're 27, 28. So cool. Next 10 years, who knows where you go with this? I'm sure there's a whole nother conversation to dig in what you want to do personally. But thank you for jumping on, and thank you for treating creators well, and thank you for being this digital renegade. And I am excited to see where you go in the next couple of years.
Danny, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And, if you need anything from me, you know where to find me.
There it
All
is.
right?